Okay, so it's Kate Jennifer recording Russell Boyce on Saturday the 9th of August 2025 in Kate's house in Uffington. Okay, so Russell, start from the beginning.
The beginning of the whole thing is that from a very early age, all I ever wanted to do is pictures. And I remember very clearly the moment that actually happened was we were at school. I was probably about 6 or 7, and the teacher, she had cut out on brown card and stuck on a tree, and there's all the branches and all this stuff. And there's a tree, there's a blue sky, there's a big circle with a yellow sun there. And in her drawer, she had lots of leaves. I think she was talking about photosynthesis, something like that. And she asked all the children, so, okay, children, what's missing from the picture? And I used to never ever used to. I said, how? And she said, oh, Russell, what's missing? I said, Miss, the sun's shining and there's no shadows, because I thought I saw the shadow. And she wanted to say there's leaves missing, and I didn't say it. And so she said, oh, she said, that's very good. And she said, also, of course, there's no leaves. I said, you can pick 2 friends, if you like, and you can stick the leaves on and paint some shadows on the tree. And I thought it was great. So I chose my best friend, Colin Daniels, and a girl I really, really liked, and her name was Helen Attewell. And we spent the afternoon painting and sticking rather than doing all the boring schoolwork. And I thought, this is for me, art stuff. And so I knew from that moment on, I wanted to do pictures. My parents... basically, none of my family have ever gone to university. There's for the background, my grandfather on my mother's side was a postman, and my grandfather on my mother's, and that's it, on my father's side was a cobbler. He used to make shoes. So there's no experience of arts or anything in that world. That's unbelievable. And when I said I wanted to do drawings, and I used to be obsessed with drawing, I draw. My friend, 2 friends used to draw, used to have cartoons, or used to make them up. I used to make up characters and do cartoons, and then I started collecting Marvel comics. I used to love, and I would buy the comics, not by the characters, Spider-Man or Fantastic Four, whatever it was, but by the artist who was drawing, because I liked certain artists. So Jim Starlin was my favourite, and when the artists moved from one character to another, I would then start collecting those comics, because the artist, and I used to basically love all that. But my parents didn't want me to do arts because they said, you can't get a job, you can't earn any money, don't be silly, blah, blah, blah. And so they made me do the sciences, and for the whole of my school up to when I did the GCSEs, I only did sciences and English and maths and stuff. And I realised that what I really wanted, and then of course you have the conversations about university and all that stuff, and I thought, what are you going to do with your life, so I thought, I don't know. So, and I said, well, I really want to do art, and eventually they said, okay, let's go to the school and see if you can do A-level art. And I went to go and see the tutor there. And he said, well, you haven't done O-level GCSE art, so you can't do the A-levels. And he said, but let me have a look at your work. So I showed him all my cartoons, my drawings. He said, that's fantastic. He said, I'll tell you what we can do. You can do the A-level, but you have to do the O-level in the first year, and then you have to do the A-level in the second year. So basically you've got to do 4 years worth of work in 2 years, which of course I did, because I just thought, well, how nice is that? You sit in the classroom and you're painting and drawing and blah blah, and I loved it. And the second year of A-levels, we met this guy called Mr. Taylor, and he was exactly as you can imagine. He's sort of like a beatnik. He had a big moustache, and he'd have sort of grey hair and and swooped hair and berry, and he would invite us around to his house and my friend Liz, and we would just chat and talk about art, talk about painting, and have a glass of wine, and it was just like a grown-up space, and I felt sort of liberated in this grown-up space. And I did all the work, and I really wanted to be a painter. I love light, and I was very interested in oils and how you build up layers of oil so they become translucent, and that I used to love all that the way the light came through there. But I always liked to paint where people were, so I wouldn't do in the studio. I'd always go out and try and paint there live, and I like the interaction with people. So then I did the foundation course in Cambridge. So I got an A in both of those things, which was nice, so because I wasn't an A student really, because words sort of swirl around. I'm pretty the words don't work for me. But then I did the foundation. I got into the foundation course. And Julia Ball, I think was the name of the woman. She was a painter there in Cambridge. So it was in Cambridge Foundation course, and she was a very gentle woman and lovely. Of course, in foundation, she tried lots of different things. And you did a bit of sculpture, did a pottery. Hated pottery. I just couldn't get on with it. All that clay and mess and stuff going horrible. So I didn't like that. But I said I wanted to do painting, and at the time, you have to remember this was in the early 80s where the country was in massive recession, so the thought you're going to go to university to study fine art in a period of Thatcher and recession and unemployment was bizarre. My father was really worried about it all, and he said, what are you going to do for a living? I said, Dad, don't worry, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I just knew it'll be fine. And I've always believed it'll be fine. It just is fine. Things fine. If you work hard enough and you get your lucky breaks and you really have a passion, I think no matter what you want to do, it's fine. So I was working in Tesco's actually, Tesco Bakery, and it was in Bar Hill. And I used to work on the shop floor first of all. And which I hate it because people always ask you where the tomato puree is. Where's the tomato? I'd never know where the tomato puree is. Where's the? I go, don't know. I didn't like people asking me things, and I used to have to load the shelves. And one day someone was asking me something about it. We had electric forklift trucks to get the pallets of. You get the pallet of the beans, whatever, and you wheel it, and then you have to stack the shelves. And I remember this woman was talking to me, and I had the forklift truck thing like that. And talking to her, I didn't know that I'd activated the thing to go up, and it just half got under someone else's trolley, lifted the trolley right up in the air, and the whole thing just crashed to the ground, everything smashed. And as a punishment, the management said to her, right, you can go in the bakery and clean up all the mess that's there. And for me, it's just perfect. So I didn't have to deal with customers, all that. And I worked in the bakery, and then I got my friend John Moore, who I was actually recently reconnected with. I got him a job as well, so we used to both go there, but we had to be there at like 5:30, 6 in the morning, and it was during the time of punk. So we'd go to the Cambridge Corn Exchange, go and see the Clash or the Damned or whatever it was, drink underage, come back. So because I lived in a village 9 miles north of Cambridge, so we'd have to cycle into town, and you could never we're going to meet people. You never meet people looking like I've just cycled 9 miles in the pouring rain. Then we cycle way home, drunk, whatever. Go home, get home, and then have to cycle to Bar Hill to start a baker's job. And basically, it was a lot of fun, and we learned basically how to become bakers because the guys there realised that we were half smart, and they used to say, "Oh, lad, you arrived here," and so we're going for a breakfast, which meant they disappeared for 2 hours. And we would mix up all the doughs, we'd prove the bread and we'd grow it, and then we would know different mixes for different sorts of breads, the French sticks or the loaves or the split tins, all that stuff. And then we'd put them all in the ovens and then take them out of the ovens and then get it ready. And then the bakers would turn up when the work was done. And I remember I had my interview, because I was looking at colleges to go to, and of course you think you go to the London College, but because I'd sort of we lived in Bromley near London initially before we moved to Cambridge, and I wanted to experience something different in life. I didn't want that, I didn't quite know what it was, but I wanted something different. And I was looking at the colleges, the art schools, and money was a real problem. And I think they were investing in some of the northern colleges. So when I looked at Hull, they promised all these things. They had film, staff technology there, they had photography, they had painting, they had design, all these wonderful. I thought, I'll go there. So really, the assumption would be that you go to one of the London colleges because that's that's where you're supposed to go. So I thought, no, I wanted to go somewhere because I had more money. So there's more opportunities for me to experiment because I hadn't experimented with anything. I wanted to just consume this stuff. And so I chose Hull. But a week before my interview, I was going to go and see Mr. Taylor to show my portfolio before I went to the interview. And I drove to Tesco's because I had a blue 850 Mini, which I saved up to go to work in the National Institute of Agricultural Botany, which in Cambridge, where they measure onions and things. So I'd spend a whole summer digging up onions. You have to measure them because for the identification of different new species, which would be good for the you probably know. Yeah, for the different plants, for whether they're resilient against disease. And I had enough money to buy a car. So, because if you, like I said, when you're cycling 9 miles, you're never going to have a day ever, because bike clips, wet hair, and oil grease, it's not a good look. So you need a car. So I thought, need a car. And basically, so I put my portfolio in the back of my car, went to Tesco's. When I came out, someone had stolen my car with my whole portfolio, and thought, that's what I thought, shit. They found the car, and basically all my stuff had been gone. It's all gone, the whole portfolio gone. And the only thing I had left were all my sketches for my work. That's all I had left. And so the next week I went to Hull, and all I had for my display was drawings. That's all I had, just drawings that I did in the street. And I explained it to them. This is it, and they liked all my drawings. So I then got a place. I was offered a place. So maybe it's a good thing, because maybe the paintings were that crap and the drawings were nicer. So I went there, and I lived. Basically, those days I think with the art school they didn't have like in-house, what they call it, halls of residence. I think if you went to the university up in the Avenues area, it was very posh and nice, and you would go to the uni there and blah blah. But the art school, you're just sort of like a second-class citizen. So then I began to look for accommodation, of course, because my parents had no experience of this. I was having to do it all myself because I didn't know. They didn't know. And so then I ended up. Basically, I ended up with a pup, so I ended up on St George's Road, and there was one guy called Jerry, and he was doing nautical communications course, so he was older than us, and he was at the I think it's the Polytechnic, or there was the art school on Queen's Gardens in Hull, and there was a poly next to it where you did nursing and communication, that sort of stuff. And he was there. There's a guy called Phil Ashby who was a sculptor, and he loved doing weight training. He was all beefed up, and me and Jerry weren't. And basically that was on St George's Road. And actually one day we used to take the piss out of Phil and his weight training. And I think we went to one night drinking, and one day he used to go and all the stuff. And one day me and Jerry agreed that we would let Phil take us to the gym. He said, "I'll take you to the gym." And me and Jerry turned up there in our sort of funny vests and shorts and things, and looking puffy and pale and thin and horrible. And Phil said, "You just do this, just lots of little exercises. Do that with your feet, and do that with your arms. Oh, this is all right." And the next day, I was every bone and muscle in my body just ached and ached and ached. My girlfriend, she just rolled me out of bed, and I couldn't move. It was just horrible. And I swore never again. So I'm not really a gym bunny, but he felt it was very, very funny. I think we didn't see Jerry for 2 days. I think he just stayed in bed, just comatose like that. But anyway, so the point is that for me, Hull was like an awakening of understanding people and humanity and stuff like that. So I was doing fine art in college stuff, doing painting, and so I was basically drawing, but I wanted to always be drawing where people are. And I'll do a bit of painting. And the painting tutor, he was a drunk really, so you'd turn up in the morning and he would hate everything you did. It's just rubbish. In the afternoon, he would come back and everything would be wonderful. And I thought I'd put to the test. So he slagged off my painting, he hated this, and why am I alive, and all that stuff. And I decided to do nothing to it at all. And he went to lunch, a few pints, came back and said, "Oh, wonderful. And I thought then, it's all dependent. It's all, you have to have your own confidence in your own work. You have to go, this is what I want. Other people's opinions are, of course, valuable if you value their opinions. But then it's sometimes it's how they feel, what they think, and I said you have to choose people who are going to evaluate your work and criticise and critique it, and at the same time you have to have confidence to go, actually, I agree with that, I don't agree with that. I think that's been the hallmark of it. But anyway, basically what happened was I was drawing outside. It's always cold in Hull. I've never been so cold in my life. It's just freezing, and the heater in my Mini stopped working as well. And I remember that thing frozen in there, and I do remember sort of that the wind comes straight from Siberia into Hull and straight through any clothing you've got as a student. You've got like horrible ex-army coats that you wear because you've got no money, and it was always cold, freezing cold. And where we lived, there's no heating. There used to be frost on the inside of the window. It was just like you could scrape it, and it's bloody freezing. And the bathroom was it used to be the coal shed. It had corrugated roof metal as a roof. So when you turn the water on in there, the whole room would fill up with steam. And the bath, because it was one of those metal baths, you'd sit on it, it's cold. And so you'd have like 3 minutes of moving around like that. And you go, horrible. And tiny little flat was damp, everything was damp. But for me, really exciting. And I really liked it. And so I started doing, I was always like drawing with people. And so I thought, there's Bob Carver's Fish and Chip Shop. And it was, remember the beautiful red doors. And I was interested in the structure, like the I suppose you call them bifold doors now, they fold out. And then, of course, it made this sort of structure with all the red and the lines and all the tiles in there. And I was drawing out there, and I was interested. So I would draw the structure in reds because I would do that, and then I would look at the way people moved in, colours and the shape and the feet moving. So I was interested in the movement and the colour within the structure of the architecture. And so I was sort of using charcoals and different crayons and things to look at the blur and movement. And I remember this bloke sitting there watching me. And he said to me, "What are you doing there, son?" I said, "I'm doing some drawing." And he said, "I can't." He said, "What is that then?" I said, "It's Bob Carver's." He said, "That's not Bob Carver's." He said, "I can't see what's going on because it's quite abstract." I said, "No, it's abstract." He said, "No, mate, that's rubbish. That's rubbish. I don't look like it." And he walked off. And I thought he doesn't understand what I'm doing. I thought, what I'm doing. And then I was I had a girlfriend. She was doing graphic design, and Daniel Meadows was teaching photography. And one of the graphic design course, they would do little modules of courses, a bit of, I don't know what it's, a bit of design work, a bit of typography, a bit of photography, a bit of copy, how they, and print production and stuff. And she met this guy, Daniel, who's running the course, and I bumped into her at the same time she was talking to Daniel, and we got chatting. And then he suggested to me, I told him about my Bob Carver's painting I was doing, blah, blah. And he said to me, "Why don't you take a camera down to take some pictures to support your painting?" I thought, "Okay, I'll try that then." And you have to go to this sort of like the storeroom where there's a bloke there, a young guy that used to chase all the girls around really. But and he would, and you'd be able to sign out a camera. So you'd sign out a Nikon camera and maybe a couple of lenses and some film. Which I think you have to buy the film, or maybe you have like a couple of rolls from the college, and after you have to buy them. Of course, I had no idea this thing worked. So Daniel showed me how it worked. This is an f-stop, and this is an aperture, and this is the film, and this is how it loads. Okay, thank you very much. And basically, off I went. And learning about focusing, which is difficult to do, and the light in Bob Carver's Fish and Chip Shop, because it's half outside, half inside. It's quite bright outside when it was bright in Hull. It's not often bright in Hull, but when it's bright, it's very, very bright. And then inside it's quite dark. And you'd have that contrast of light and the light coming in, and because of all the steam and the smoke for the fish, it then diffused the light, and it was really quite nice. And so, but to try and capture that in photography is very hard. So basically, I would screw up quite a lot. So I would do things I didn't know what I was doing. The exposure would be wrong, the focus would be wrong, and slowly after processing films, I got used to it. I need to do this, and I produced a set of pictures, and I thought, "Oh, quite nice." I produced sets of pictures. But what happened then as this change, I suddenly realised that in a 60th of a second I can have a complete picture. None of this drawing and painting and mixing colours and all this stuff. And it really grabbed it was just like, this is for me. It suits my personality. I'm quite impulsive. I'm impatient to a degree, and then I suddenly go, right, I have to do this now, and I'm impulsive, that's it. And what I really like to do the pictures, and so what I decided I would do, because I used to give people prints, I'd make a print and give it to the women that were serving it, Bob Carver himself and stuff like that. And I decided that what I'd do, I'd try and have an exhibition in the chip shop. And I spoke to the chief how you do this, because basically I was then attending. What was it then? Basically, when you do a fine art course, it means you can just do what you want, and you can do nothing if you want for the whole day. You can do nothing and then turn up, throw some paint, and go, there it is, and that's fine. So I was able to do what I wanted to do. I then started doing what was basically the graphic course, doing photography, and Daniel would show me how to do this, and the guy who was in the technician would show me how to process the film and how to make a print, and I was learning all that as well. And so I was learning those skills, and what I decided that I wanted to have an exhibition in the chip shop. I thought it'd be quite a nice idea, how to show the work. So I was always keen on people to see the work and have ordinary people interacting with the work you created, because it was about them. And I mentioned to Bob Carver, he said, yeah, sure, Bob. Yeah, Bob Carver, the guy, and he said, yeah, you can do that. I think it's Bob Carver Senior at the time, because he ran it. There's Bob Carver Junior that took over the business. I think that's right. George will tell you more about that. But what I had to do is I had 16 by 12 prints, printed them up, and then I thought what I need to do is stick them on the chip shop. It's all tiled. And then the technician guy said, why don't you laminate them? And they had a laminating machine, so you stick it in, you get plastic both sides of the print. So okay, they'll go there. But when I went to stick it with those sort of double-sided bodies, there's so much grease on the wall, nothing would stick. I'm like, oh shit. So I then got sort of like this nuclear chemical type thing to wipe down all the walls. So I wiped down all the walls to get the grease off it so my pictures could stick. And that's what I did. So I must have been about 12 or maybe 16 pictures. And I've got a comments book which I hung up there as well. And there lots of people wrote comments, but my favourite comment, which I remember even today, was great pictures of people enjoying their day the Bob Carver's way. And I thought that was it. And what was nice is the local paper did a little story about it, my pictures, and I think local TV came down and did it as well. So it promoted, and that to me was just magic. It means that people saw my work, even though it wasn't great. It was like the first time I ever taken pictures. The people that are actually in the pictures enjoyed the images, and the people responding visually to the people that are in the pictures and bothering to actually comment. And I thought, this is fantastic. So once I got better at photography and I was wandering around the St George's Road, I used to, wherever I went, I would go, that's fantastic. So I saw George Norris was on his horse and cart. I saw him go past a couple of times, rag bone, battery. He used to shout, battery, boiler, bike frame lumber, rag bone. That was his cry. And I thought, that's quite good, I like that. And a couple of times. And also further up one side of the street. So you come out of my house, I think it was 242 St George's Road, turn left, and up there was St George's pub. And you come out, turn right to go down to Hessel Road and further along. And there would be what the pub's called Star and Garter. And then there's also George. So I started doing, I went into it's complicated. Many things all happened at the same time because that's how. So like I wasn't working on one story at one particular time and the next story. I was working on 3 different things. So I'd go to the Star and Garter at lunchtime, and there'd be the old boys there, the fishermen there, drinking their pints because the lights were fantastic. They're all smoking in there. There was the windows were half frosted and half clear with heavy curtains, and so when the sun came around, the light would stream in. It'd be beautiful, very contrasty. And then sometimes, and then Brett Hamling, who was the year above me, I mentioned to him about this rag and bone man. He said, I know him. So Brett introduced me to George, and so then I met George and said, can I take pictures of George? So George said, yeah, you can come along. And I was then photographing him to go out with him for a time, taking pictures. But then further up the road, the St George's pub, which was run by Clarice Mack. Sunday night was drag night, and I just stumbled across it. I thought I'd go for a pint. I think me and Jerry went up there from the house. We were going to go for a pint in there. Stumbled in there, and they were setting up the stage, and what's happening? And then this drag act happening. It was just like mind-blowing chaos. It was just like, and I'm sitting there with my southern head and my because everyone thought I was very posh because of my southern accent. I'm not particularly posh, but they and just this chaos erupted, and everyone got completely shit-faced, and it was like standing on the chairs and singing and blah 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 and shouting and I'll never forget it. So at the end of the show, so it was Candy DeBarry at the time. That's what it's called, Ray Minnington, and he would do this song called he would mime to there'd be he'd have cassettes, he'd put it on and he would mime to the different cassettes but dressed up in different outfits. It can be a pregnant nun, it can be Shirley Temple, it could be Shirley Bassey, it could be just different characters would come out, and it was just fantastic. But at the end of his show he would sing along to What Makes a Man by Charles Aznavour, and he would change from basically, normally it's his Union Jack outfit because we'd just standing on the chairs all shouting Rule Britannia and they'll always be in England waving arms, and then he would transform from this flamboyant drag artist into a sort of a balding, slightly built, guy wearing black trousers, and there he was. And he'd wipe his makeup off, and then at the end of it, he would bow down on this little stage, and Clarice Mack would, I'll never forget, she goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, Candy Du Barry, a true artiste," she would say. She wouldn't say artiste, and she would make her a clap. And if you weren't clapping, she'd go, "Oi, you're not clapping, clap," and you have to clap, 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 clap. And she'd be ferociously around that. And then it would disappear, and then they think, "Oh, finally," when you tumble home, and then your day work would happen, and then the next week, Sunday, would be drag night again there. And it was just fantastic. And even though he would do different acts, so that the evening format was the same. They'd come on, it'd be a few drinks, there'd be like a warm-up act, and he might appear in whatever costume it was, and he would go off, change, it means he could buy some more drinks. And the St George's was divided into two bars. So if you go into the building, on the left-hand side, I think it was the salon, or saloon, no, the saloon, that's it. On the right-hand side was the bar. And on a Sunday night, and any other night it'd be like different, there'd just be local guys, people in there drinking, and blah, blah. It's quite a quiet place. Sunday night was different. So crammed on the left-hand side would be the Candy Du Barry show. Gay night, basically. Everyone called it gay night in there. But then all the local drinkers, a lot of them weren't interested, so they would be in the other bar. And I remember one time I was there with my girlfriend, and it was the interval. So she said, "Go and get me a drink." I said, "Okay." I said, "I'll get the drinks." So I went. So the bar on the Candy side was heaving. So I thought, I'll nip in to get into the other bar and get the drink there. And there's these big fellas in there, and they knew that I'd come from the other bar. So I squeezed in amongst the bar, and she was drinking that disgusting drink called Snowball. Is it white? Is it white fluid? Horrible. Why anyone would drink that's beyond me. So I went into the bar, the other side, and I said, "Can I have a pint of bitter? And can I get a Snowball, please?" And this bloke who was right next to me like that, he said to me, "Is that for you, love?" I said, "No, it's not for me." I said, "Who's that for then?" I said, "That's for my girlfriend." He said, "What's his name then?" I said, he's a she, so he's not a he, he's a she. He said, "Oh right." He said, "But you're from next door." I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's a strange bunch in there, but it's fun, you know." So it's like and there was sort of like this. It was a slight Mickey take, but it wasn't angry. It was just gentle joshing. You know, I didn't feel threatened. I felt like, and I think they were enjoying the sport because I have a funny southern accent. I'm buying this weird, strange Snowball drink. And I've come from there, and I think I might have even had my camera with me as well, which when you have a camera immediately, because those days having a camera is quite rare, and it immediately draws attention to you, and then so you're immediately a possible target for joshing. Anyway, so I went there, but it was always fun. I never saw any trouble there ever. It always welcoming and good and just a fun evening, and and other people would drift in. It wasn't necessarily part of sort of Ray's group, because Ray would have like his entourage of people. I think there's a guy called Twaddles there, and different people, and Clarice Mack would run it like a commandant. Oh, you know, she would sort it out. A fabulous woman. She was always wear sort of those suits, you know, and the double-breasted suits and pearls. A ferocious woman, but in control of the whole thing. Hair was all set, lippy, but you did not mess with her at all. And it was a great evening, but always calm, always good. And what was nice is that they got so used to me taking pictures that they just forgot about me, which was lovely. And I was learning through Daniel to use different techniques. So it's quite it's a night, so it's dark. So to freeze the action, because he was quite frenetic, you'd have to use flash to capture it. Because if you use too slow a shutter speed, it'd be blurring out of focus. And if you use flash, it just killed the light that's all around. So then I said to them, I need to combine a mixture. I need to retain the light to get a sense of the space, and I want to also freeze the motion. So then he taught me all about flash blur. So you can but what it is you have a slower shutter speed, and you pop a flash into it during the exposure, so it freezes some part of the image. And then because it allows the ambient light into it, the rest of it blurs. And the longer the exposure, the more blur you get. But you always get the frozen image, and you have to strike a balance as to how much blur and how much frozen you want, and how much to get the light in. And I was very interested in that. So some of my images are really, really blurry, where I've just done a tiny flash and long exposure, and some I've got like a little bit of movement in it as well. So I was beginning to build up a sort of a visual portfolio of the evening as well. So some things needed photographing with no flash at all, just ambient light, and some things direct flash because it was like pow, because it added to the image, and some things was a mixture of the two. So as you're working through the negatives and doing an edit, you begin to get a sense of the visual experience of being in that pub as well, with the smoke and that. So I was then beginning to work on my edit as to put the story together as to how I think it should look visually. One of my regrets is I never actually went to the room where Ray was changing. I never thought to do it because I was always too busy just taking pictures and drinking. I didn't think about that. I always regret that. So when I followed up again in 2021, I decided that's what would be quite an important part of it as well. But so I was photographing George at the same time, and that worked very, very well. And the Star and Garter pictures as well. So it's now raining, so that was very good. But what else? What else really? Yeah, I think that's it. So the editing of the pictures was always interesting. I became, because those days using film 36 frames. That's it, and you can't look at the back of the camera like good now. Whereas you have to process it, and sometimes you look at the work and go, oh no, that's not quite work, blah blah. But what was always like, so I would go and show my work to Daniel, and he would go through the contact sheets. So film, what you do, you process the film, you cut them up in sixes, you put a piece of glass or photographic paper, you make a contact sheet so you can see all the images small, so you can go through with a loop and look at the pictures. And I remember showing my work to Daniel, and I'd sort of just crash into his lessons thinking, oh, look at this, and he was always very welcoming. He would always say, yeah, I'll have a look, always find time, always encouragement, and he would actually critique your work, but you always came away with a piece of knowledge and the sense that you'd actually achieved something good, you'd move forward. Because I mean, he's a big guy, and he'd bellow out laughing when he'd see a picture. He'd like, ah, and his arms would wave around his hair, and he'd really like, oh, what a great one that is, and go, oh, that's a fantastic picture. But wouldn't it be nice if you also did this? So you'd come away feeling good. You'd come away feeling you'd learned something, and you'd also come away with another nugget of information that you need to, when you're shooting more pictures, to learn and improve your photography and your storytelling, because that's what Daniel was always about when working with him. He said, you've got to tell the story, you've got to show it's an ordinary scene, you've got to photograph it in a way it hasn't been photographed, or show something that's ordinary in a way that hasn't been seen before, or you do something that's extraordinary. And the Candid Barry show was always extraordinary because what went on, just every night was different. So I remember one evening there, the show was going on, and this bloke in a gorilla suit turned up, and the place was always very full. There's never room to move. You couldn't move, and all the tables were squashed in, and people were squished around. And this gorilla turned up, and I think it just grabbed a woman who screamed, and the table went over, the beers went everywhere. This gorilla came around, and he sat on someone's knee and hugged people, and just disappeared. And I thought, what has just happened there? And I remember getting like 2 or 3 frames off of this bizarre thing happening. I think 2 out of focus, 1 was good enough. And people laughing and mayhem. And when they left, there's like beer everywhere and glass everywhere. Just fantastic. And it was only when I photographed Ray again, I asked about this. He said, he loved gorillas. He loved gorillas. He's got little stuffed gorillas all around his house. And he said, I always thought it'd be fun to have a gorilla. So he used to get his mate to dress up in a gorilla suit. And you would never know when they'd turn up. They'd turn up, crash around, but because it wouldn't happen for maybe 3 weeks. And then suddenly the gorilla would reappear for no reason at different times of the scene, almost like it was something happening parallel to the act. You go, what was that about? But it was a lot of fun. So good, yeah, and nice. So it was nice to see different things. And the hardest thing is actually editing down, because when you get different costumes. So he would have a costume like suspenders and bra and big what they call those boas. Is it a feather boa swirling around them? And he would loop people's necks with them and pull them in and be, oh my god, yeah. Because you get people just coming for a pint, and there wasn't really another place. They'd come there, and and he would know if someone had never knew what was going on. They go, oh, there's a bit of a show going, that's nice. And suddenly they're drawn in, and he would choose people to. He never intimidated. It was always inclusive. It was fun, and people enjoyed it. And it was just a fun evening. A very fun evening. Yeah.
Can you remember the costumes?
Yeah. There was basically Shirley Temple, a little dress and the wig, a little dress that came out. There was Shirley Bassey. It was all, or there's either a white outfit with all tassels and very Shirley Bassey. There's a black one and a white one, I think. There was, I'll never forget, the Pregnant Nun Act, and the song they used to sing was Always Something There to Remind Me. So it'd come up with an enormous balloon, and it's a nun, and there's an enormous balloon where they're pregnant, and singing There's Always Something There to Remind Me. And at some part of the show, he would then burst the balloon, it would just disappear, and then people would go, oh, that's fantastic. So that was always good. There was just like basically the strippers outfits. There'd be suspenders and bra, all sort of black, sort of like that sort of. I remember him telling me. He said his mum didn't like him wearing that outfit, or maybe it was his grandson. I think it was his grandson. Oh, I don't. He said you don't like you showing your arse in public. It was just too rude. And he said to me, he said I kept it. He said, put a loaf of bread on my table, which made me laugh. Yeah. So, and I've got a lovely picture. And he's wearing this, the full flying kit, and he's twizzling this bow around, and he's got this sort of slightly contorted face on it. And there's a woman sitting in front of it watching, and she's got a great big fur coat on it. And you don't quite know which person is a drag artist and which one is actually just turned up looking glamorous. So there's a lot of the women also wear, they're almost slight mirroring of the way people would dress that way, because people would make a lot of effort with how they would, and they would wear fur, and the hair would be all bouffant, a lot of lippy and stuff. And but a lot of young people there as well. So it's just there's what other outfits they have. A little Red Indian as well, Red Indian acts with tassels on the dresses, brown dresses. I can't remember what song they did, but it was. And also that's at the end of it. So there'll be a couple of shows. So where maybe Pregnant Nun, or maybe Shirley Temple, or Shirley Bassey. But then towards the end of the evening, he would come out and wear a large Union Jack dress, and I think he'd have a great big blue wig, a Union Jack dress, and he would sing. They'd always sing. There'd be a couple of songs. But they always sing like Rule Britannia, and they'll always be in England, and people would always be on the chairs joining hands and all like that. So, but he told me that dress was actually made out of a double duvet, and it was just, he said, oh yeah, sorry, I must have that then. And he would open his arms to reveal the whole Union Jack, and it was just done. People just enjoyed it. But occasionally you get people that would not have anything to do with it, so they would not get involved, they wouldn't stand on the tables, they wouldn't sing. And I got a picture of this chaos and people standing on the chairs and two people sitting like that, they're not interested at all. And actually Ray told me, he says the guy that was sitting there looking grumpy, he said he was a lovely guy. He said he would never sing like that. And he said he would never talk to me when I was in drag. He would only talk to me when I came out of the pub as Ray Williams. And he said he was a lovely guy. So it's just, I don't know what else, but he liked him. That's what he told me. So those are the outfits, yeah. And he would do the changes. So a quick change. Like I said, I regret not photographing and changing him. And a couple of times I remember photographing him waiting to do his entrance. So standing in the corridor where the toilets were. Where you walk in, there's a corridor down in the middle, and the left was where he performed, on the right was the bar. And he's waiting outside for his cue on the tape. I think the guy put the cue on the tape. And then there's a guy coming at the toilets, and he's standing up, and he was a bit shocked. And there, standing in the hallway, is a pregnant nun. He's thinking, "What's going on here?" Waiting for the show to begin. So, and I've got that picture. It's one of my favourites. And he goes in and stuff, and he would perform. Basically, they'd run cassette tapes, and the person that helped him play it, and he puts cues on there. And the sound system he always wanted it to be right. So Ray was always focused on making sure that the show was right. He always wanted his costumes to be good, and he wanted his makeup to be good, and it had to be perfect, because no matter how many people turned up there, it was important for the show to work for him. And it was good. And then at the end of the evening, pack up and then chat, and then it all go home.
So you were still studying while all this was happening?
Yeah, that's what I was doing, yeah.
And then what happened? So you were making these photos?
I fell in love with documentary photography. I fell in love with photography, and I wanted to make a living doing this. And when you're young and you believe and you follow exhibitions, I had a picture exhibited in the Hayward Gallery in London at the time. It was when the Falklands were happening. What was the ship that came back to Hull? Norland. Was it Norland? That's right, yeah. And I remember the Norland couldn't dock because it was too windy, and we were waiting for the ship to turn up. And I got this picture of a group of policemen, and they're all just waiting. There's a great gust of wind, and it blew them all like that. And they look like they're doing this dance. There's all these policemen around. They look like they're doing a dance, and one of them, and that was exhibited in the Young Blood exhibition in the Hayward Gallery in London. And I got a commission from the what was it called now? The Impressions Gallery at the time was in York. And it was basically it was called the Road to Wigan Pier. It's based on because it was 1984 then, and I got a commission with 5 other photographers to shoot pictures based around Orwell books, and mine was the Road to Wigan Pier. And I photographed a woman called Tina that was living in a condemned house in Hull, and who George introduced me actually. She was there. She was pregnant. I think her younger sister was living with her because their mum wasn't around. It was a complicated situation. The place was squalid. It was really, really damp and horrible. And George introduced me to her, and she said, because I wanted to with the Orwell books, there's this extreme poverty that you go on. But also, I was aware that within the poverty, there's always life goes on. People find joy, people find pleasure. And I wanted to photograph that. So it was partly about the unemployment that was happening, because remember there's a massive recession around this time. So it was Tina who was struggling in this house that was condemned. So it's a little cul-de-sac of houses that used to be on the back of factories, and most of them were boarded up, and she was living on, she was waiting to be rehoused. And it was really squalid. Outside toilet, really squalid thing. And she was pregnant, and she was basically nothing. She said to me, she said, "I'm so bored, I'm just smoking myself to death." I got a picture of her sitting there with her mate sitting on the chair next to her. She's smoking, watching telly, and on the telly, I think it's Margaret Thatcher, which was PM. She was actually visiting Madame Tussauds, and where she was looking at the waxwork of her. So on the telly is 2 Margaret Thatchers with Tina sitting there with a cigar, pregnant, and I remember she had poverty there. So it's like her shoes were really scruffy, and so she wanted to try and look smart, do the best, but her shoes are really, really worn out, and that really quite struck me. But anyway, so that work was shown in the Impressions Gallery, which was fantastic for me because it's quite a prestigious thing to do. And I tried to, at that time you could get grants where you get residencies, and you can stay in for a town for a little while, and you do a residency where you do your own projects and you can help people, you teach them a little bit of that. I applied for a couple of those, which I didn't get. One was in Boston, and then basically I realised that I moved to Peterborough, and basically the day I was trying to get work to do these commissions, and basically the money ran out. And the day I picked a piece of bread out of my own bin that I threw the day before, or threw away the day before, because it was too mouldy. There's too much mould on it. I thought, I can't eat it, too much mould, and I had no money and no food. And so I got that piece of bread out of the bin to eat it, and I thought, this is not so good. And I thought, this isn't working. So my sister, she used to work for the Cambridge Evening News, and she was friends with Michael Manley, who ran his own photographic business. And she heard that he wanted someone to be in Peterborough, he wanted to expand his business. So he basically got a part-time job with him, basically taking pictures if someone needed a passport picture done, and that he then closed that. It didn't work, and in the end I ended up coming down working for him, working in the darkroom, so I spent all my time printing, and I know he would do commercial work, and it was good. A good experience because I learnt the commercial aspects of photography there as well. The fact, and we used to do things like it was all before digital, so everything was film. You have to copy slides. And he would do studio work, he would do wedding work, he would do PR work, and he'd do a bit of press work. And what I was interested in is the press work. Really, I like that idea of doing that. But because I could, as a cheery chappy, and when we did PR work, often you go to PR work, and all the suits, they'd all have an idea what they wanted. They wanted to do a picture like this and do it like that. And it's always boring and horrible. And so what you'd have to do with those people is you go, yeah, great idea. And say, gentlemen, do you mind if we just do this? And you arrange a picture and you shoot it, and it's a nice picture, which of course they will love. So Michael realised that I could do that because it made a lot of money, but I wanted to do press work. So when occasional press job came in from one of the national newspapers, can you go to do the court work or do this, do that? Because it had occupied a whole day, you wouldn't earn as much money as if you do the commercial work. And he wanted me to do more and more commercial work. I could sense him, if he had to choose, he'd make me do the commercial work. And then one day I heard, actually a job, I heard that there was a job going at a news agency, a small called Anglo Press Agency, and it was at the time when they were doing the pioneering work with heart and lung transports in Papworth Hospital. And I remember we got a call, and there was this woman that had, I think she had heart, the whole lot. She had a lot. It was a real groundbreaking operation. And I was sent off to the hospital to see if I could get some sort of picture. Goodness knows what you'd think you'd get. And it's also when the business was changing from black and white to colour. So some newspapers, like Today, would want colour transparency. Others, like the Mirror, and the Mirror wanted colour negative. And the broadsheet still wanted black and white. So you'd have 3 cameras, one loaded with transparency, one loaded with colour neg, one loaded with black and white, because they'd all want different things. So in those days, you'd put the roll of film on the train, and it would come down. Someone in London would pick it up and then process the stuff. So you can imagine I have 3 cameras with all this film in. Turn up the car park. And as I turned up the car park, the family turned up, and it was the family of this woman that had just had this operation done. And right in front of me, they're all hugs and kisses, it was just very, very emotional. And I had these 3 happening all in front of me. So I was taking pictures on the film, on the transparency, on the black and white, and in there I ended up with all these cameras twisted around my neck like a tie. But I had basically 3 cameras worth of all this stuff. So Michael Manning was over the moon with this stuff, so we sent it all off, and it actually fronted just about every single newspaper in the country. So it's front, because it was a non-intrusive moment of an emotional time with his family. So it was, I think they're very strong pictures. Anyway, so that was all there, and I'd heard on the grapevine that Anglo Press Agency were looking for a full-time news photographer. So I phoned them up and said, I'm interested in this job. They said, okay, yeah, come and have an interview. And because I was working for Michael Mann, I was working 13 days every 14. So that's how he works on Saturdays. I never did weddings ever, because I just can't stand the pressure. That's just too much pressure. There's a guy, what was his name? Keith. That was Keith. Lovely guy. Just so calm. He was almost like a monk. And he would do his weddings. He would shoot at large format, and I would assist him. I would help load the film, stuff like that. And he would control this thing. I just thought I would never ever want to do that. I remember joking once with a place of, let's do some pictures on the blue patio. And it was a swimming pool with a blue cover. Luckily the bride didn't, because it would have not been good. Yeah, but I remember Keith giving me a hard time about making such a silly joke. But yeah. So anyway, so they phoned me up and said, okay, you come down it was on a Sunday. He said, and we met up in the pub, and the 2 guys that run the business called Anglo Press Agency, and they're based in Colchester. There's 2 guys. There's Jeff Cooper and Richard Goss, and they were both text journalists, and they used to work for the Nationals Sketch, and they decided to come to East Anglia. And we met in the pub, and we started drinking, and eventually they said to me, how quickly can you get a picture out of the darkroom, from arriving with film to getting the picture ready to be sent? And I didn't really know what the answer was. I didn't want to exaggerate it, because I know I was exaggerating. I didn't want to say it too long, because I think I was slow. So because I didn't really know what the answer was, I said to Richard, I said, well, is that wet or dry negs? And because he was a technique, he had no idea what I was talking about. He said, I don't know, you better ask Phil. He said, anyway, whose round is it? And then we just basically took a try. And that was it. They offered me the job. And they offered me the job. So Michael Manners, I left them at Christmas and started at Anglo Press Agency. I had nothing in London, nothing like it, just almost like a holder with a few clothes, and I drove down there. And they said, we've got a company flat. So, that's good, that's what you said. And so I said, Jeff was married to Jackie, and they had a very nice house there. And the company flat was basically a derelict building that had, sometimes it had water, sometimes it did. It had no heating at all. And it was one of those things we had to put 50p's in for electricity. It was freezing cold winter, and the power stopped working. And we used to drink in the Wigan Pen, which was in there. And Jackie was there one day. She said, hello, Russell. She said, how are you? You're a new photographer? Yes. She said, where are you living? I said, I'm living in the company flat. He said, what do you mean the company flat? I said, the place in, I think it was Wellesley Street or something, Colchester. and she barked at Jeff. What do you mean? You're making this guy sleep in that blah blah blah. And she then said, "Well, you can't live anywhere. It's disgusting." And I lived with him with them in the house for a month. And it turned out that basically, because she said I was basically living in a derelict building, their photographer. And so then the barmaid was a woman called Sue, and she said, "I've got a spare room. You can come and be my tenant." So Sue became my life. She was a lifelong friend. We weren't lovers; we were just friends. She was my best woman at my wedding, actually. So she's a lovely, very lovely woman. And so that was good. So and basically I spent the whole maybe 2 years, 18 months, 2 years, doing press photography for the tabloids, basically. And those guys taught me everything you need to know about making a living as a news photographer. And you'd have to do horrible stories. You'd have to go into houses where people had died to try and get what's called a collect picture. You get the pictures of people when they died. You'd have to knock on the door when they died and explain it and try and get the picture and explain what you're doing. I was never aggressive, though. I'd always say, if they said no, I said, well, this is nice. And there's ways to do it, because I think it's important to have images of people and stories. I think it's very important to do it. And you would discuss with them how you do it, and then we'd do court stories as well. She'd wait outside the court for the person that was being on criminal trial, whatever it was, the photograph them coming in. And sports. I used to shoot football. So I used to shoot football we used to cover Norwich and Ipswich. And so that involved in going up because we're based in Colchester, you drive there, kick off, and depending on the deadline, because basically you'd have to get your film back to Anglia Press Agency, and those days you had an NJ man, so you couldn't wire the picture yourself, so we'd come back, process the negatives, we would then get the print, Jeff or Richard would write the caption, type it out, it would then be stuck on the bottom of the 8/6 print, and this print would then be put on a drum, and it would be transmitted to London. And the way it worked is your NGA man in our office, he would contact the NGA man in the Colchester Post Office, who would then contact the NGA man in London, who would then contact the NGA man in each of the clients, so it's the Express or the Mirror or the Guardian or the Times, and then the picture would be, all right, George, yeah, hello, Fred, blah, blah, and they'd basically connect the wires up, you'd start the print, drum roll, and it will then scan the image and send it analog to the client. Yeah, all right, good, yeah, fine. And then you get the next person online to send the pictures, to be the football pictures. And of course, when the papers goes to the press, once they've gone to the press, that's it. So you have to be fast. So we would have to drive. You would have to work out when you left Norwich football ground to get in time to process the film and get it to get the paper in. So these days, I mean, it's all digital and stuff's being immediately. So you'd only do about the first few minutes of the football. You'd have to do a little bit of action, maybe maximum 20 minutes, and hope you go all manual focus, all film, and you'd roll back in your car. So you'd have to drive from Norwich to Colchester in an hour, which was it's the 140, isn't it? It's like a racetrack. I mean, just like how I lived was just like, I was, of course you're 20 and it's fun, it's exciting, and you're driving dangerously, and it's like, and you get there, process the film, and off you send it. And then next day you see it in the Sunday papers, your picture. And it was very exciting. You'd never get byline, there'd be, at worst, APA. And the two guys there, so eventually I ended up living I lived in above a sandwich bar as well there. And it was at the bottom of the hill. So Jeff's wife ran sandwich bars called, what was it called? Can't remember now. I'll come back in a minute. But so we used to drink in the Wigan Pen. And in the Wigan Pen, so we'd all be sitting in the offices down in Hythe, I think it's Hythe Road and near the docks in Colchester. And the office was lovely. There'd be three tables all put together. Jeff and Rich were sitting there with their typewriters typing away. And there'd be literally a pile about 1.5 foot high of all the newspapers there. The place was always messy. And Jeff would smoke his pipe. And there's the day Warren, he would go, I'll never forget, he looked like Jockey Wilson. And he'd go, Rusty, my boy, time for a pint. I go, okay, Jeff. And then we'd all go up. So we'd get in the cars. Jeff had a Mercedes. Gossie had a Range Rover. We'd all go to the Wigan Pen. And I lived we would go there. We'll fill ourselves up with booze, between 6 and 8 pints of IPA. I'll tumble down the hill where I was living, above the sandwich shop. And what would happen is that Gossie, Richard Goss, he would be the early man. So he would go home early. So he would look at the newspapers, listen to the news. And so he would phone me up, and it was days before mobile phones, so it'd bleep me, or I'll be in the flat and he would call me on the phone, or it'd bleep me and the bleep would go, I'd have to go to the phone box, yes, it would go to Kings Lynn, go to wherever, this is happening, that's okay, fine. So he would wake me up at 6 or maybe 7 in the morning, I'd get in the car, roar off to do whatever story it was, take the pictures, come back to the office, process the film, and then Jeff would go, Rusty my boy, time for a pint. And that would happen. And then I would end up from the pub and roll down the hill into my flat, and then the next day. And that's what I did. And I remember I didn't really eat very much there. I was just living on IPA. And the Wigan Penner did this lovely thing called garlic potatoes, which was basically sliced potatoes with oil and garlic in it, put it in there. Fantastic. It was really, really lovely. And basically, I actually had a rash on my skin. I don't know what that is. I went to the doctor's, and he said to me, he said, that's not very good, is it? He said, tell me about your diet. And I described my diet. He said, actually, you've actually got vitamin deficiencies, and you've got the way you're living. Basically, you're not going to live very long. It's not good. So he said, what are you going to? He said, I had to eat carrots. So I used to have a bag of carrots peeled in my car. So I was driving, eating carrots to try to. But I didn't make the association between the garlic potatoes and the IPA. So I thought the carrots was the cure. And then I had to change my lifestyle a little bit. But I learned a lot about. I remember one day there was a court case we did, and there's the guy Phil Hannaford worked for the Sun, and sometimes other newspapers would come and they would actually wire from our place. And I think it was there's like a court marshalling, and they were all trying to protect the person because you could take pictures there and you could see him. But I remember waiting to see this guy's face, and I waited, and I didn't see a face. I didn't drop a single frame. Whereas Philip took a picture, and all you could see was this guy's ear, and he sent the picture. And Jeff said to me, he said, Russell, he said, you didn't take a picture. You took nothing. You got no picture. He said, how can we pay you if we haven't got something to sell? If you haven't got a picture we can sell, it might only be an ear, it might only be a gag loaf. So it's not the guy himself, but it's anything. We've got nothing to sell, so therefore, how can we make money to pay you? And it opened my eyes to the fact that you need to be commercially successful for your work to carry on. And it was a very important lesson to me that I learned that, because you've got nothing to sell, nothing to make money, you can't work, you can't do anything at all. So I've always learned that. I thought it was very, very important. Then what happens after about 18 months working for them, I didn't want to do tabloid work because it didn't really suit my personality, and I enjoy it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's brutal, but you learn your skills, you learn the job, and you meet some fantastic, interesting people. So it's not all angry tabloid stuff. You do nice feature stories for the broadsheets, and you do interesting stuff. But I was learning the trade to actually make a living as a photographer, because I didn't want to be someone that works in a bar that says one day I'm going to be a photographer. I wanted to make my living taking pictures. I didn't want to do weddings, so I couldn't do it. It didn't make me too nervous. I didn't want to work in a studio because I didn't want to be confined in. I wanted to be with people. So news photography and the camera for me was always a passport into people's lives, people's stories, good stories, bad stories, sad stories, happy stories. So even for sport, it's a story for 90 minutes. I used to like that. And then so all of those things, that was my thinking. Then I saw a job advertised in the UK Press Gazette. Reuters were moving their international operation from Brussels to London, and they were looking for, I think, 8 young photographers and picture editors to sit on their UK desk operation to basically look at the feed of all the pictures coming in. And they said it's a desk job. It's not a photographer, it's a desk job. But what you do is you look at all these pictures coming from around the world, and you edit them. And I thought, actually, I would like to do that because I can learn. Eventually, I might be able to become whatever was a new skill. So I remember getting an interview, and I had to get a reference from Jeff, so the two guys, because they were used to the ideas. So what they would do, the Anglo Pressers, they would get young photographers, they'd work them to death, and eventually the photographers would go and work for basically the Nationals. That's what they would do, and they would go. So Simon Runting, there was a guy called Cleggy, Simon Wilkinson, Phil Hannaford. There's a guy called Shaky, who worked for the BBC. They also did video as well, or not film, for BBC, Days of Bolex. but then people then move on to work for the Nationals, and it was almost like a training ground, like a boot camp to learn the business. And so I said to them, I'm going to go and work for I'm going to apply for the job for Reuters, and they gave me a hard time because most of them go to the tabloid. Oh, bloody! They used to call it what's it called? Rim lighters, of artists. Oh, bloody rim lighters! Oh, high end. You think you're too good for us? And Jeff, remember, I said, can you write me a letter of reference? Because I need it. And he wrote me, says, dear, whoever the name was, I think it was Steve Crisp was the person. He said, our employee, Russell Boyce, is writing for your piss poor operation. He's a piss poor photographer. He's a drunk. He's abusive. He said, don't let any of your female staff, because he just can't get your hands on her. I would not recommend this person whatsoever. Something like that. And he went out, thinking, there you go. He said, and he gave it. I was like, and then it was a joke. I've still got that letter signed, but it was lovely. It's a very affectionate, and that's what it's like with them all the time. So I remember once I got a letter. I did a picture for the House Martins for their record cover. I think it was Think for a Minute, and of Flag Day. I think I did two. One was Flag Day. One was Think for a Minute. And I remember the days before mobiles, so answer phone was the height of technology, and you have to balance when you're in, so you wait for work, and when you're out, you have to have the answer phone there. And I remember getting a message on my answer phone, and it was Paul Heaton from Housemarque. He said, you don't know who I am, but I know who you are, and we want to use one of your pictures for our cover. And I said, oh, okay. So I had no idea how much charged, and I did a print, and I asked my friend Verity, actually, who's now my wife. We were friends at that time. And I said, how much I charged? And he said, I'd say NUJ rates, because you have to be a member of the NUJ then. That was another story, but get involved in that was hard work. So anyway, so I drove the print down there, gave it to them, and it was a record cover. And then by then I'd moved to Colchester, and I remember getting a letter from a solicitor saying that his client, who was basically, it's a picture I shot in the Star and Garter, this old boy, and he was saying that I hadn't secured the rights to sell this image, and he's been facing mental pressures and torment from his peers. And this guy must have been 80 if it was a day. And it's just and I was a bit shocked. This is from a solicitor. Oh my God, I was worrying. What am I going to do? And I gave this letter to Gossie. I said, Gossie, what do I do this? He said, I've got just a solution for that. And he pulled the drawer out from underneath like that, and he rummaged around like that. And he got, here it is. And he got this ink pad out. He got this ink. I went, stamp, this great big ink pad on this thing. He said, just send it back to them. And it said, bullshit. And I sent it back to them, and I never heard anything else. And that's what they were like, they were just. I remember one time they were there, they used to get bills come in there, and this bloke phoned up, and he said, oh, you haven't had the, we were inquiring about an invoice they hadn't paid. Who knows what, I can't remember what it was. And he'd go, yeah, I've just put you through to our, because we're sitting in a small room, we go, I'll just put you through to the accounts department. And those days you could click the phone, and the line would stay, so, and he'd go, hang on, and then he passed the phone over to Gossie. He goes, hello, accounts, and they go, oh, and it goes, oh, you need to talk to Mr. Jones. Okay, and he goes, and then he hand the phone to me. He goes, hello, it's Jones here, and they were just messing about, and then eventually we give it back to Gossie. And Gossie said to him, look, mate, he says we run a very tight ship here with our accounts. He said the way we do our accounts is we get all the bills we've got at the end of the month, we put them all into a hat, and out of the hat we pull out 3. If you don't fuck off, you're not even going in the hat. And you just, and this is what it's like every day, and it's like these things. And when we're drinking the Wigan Pen, there would be lawyers in there and police there, and the stories, and just being amongst this thing. It was, I mean, there weren't saints, these people, not in a million years, but you learnt a lot. You learnt the trade. But anyway, from there I went to Reuters, and I sat on the picture desk there, watching these pictures coming from all around the world, all analog. But the thing is, they said, right, they'll give you, in the cupboard there was some cameras and things, and every now and then you might get a chance to go and do a picture. If you did a picture for Reuters, when it went on the wire, it would just be sent absolutely everywhere. And we used to wear a shirt and a tie. You have to wear a jacket because that was expected. And they called me Boyce. I'm sitting there, picture coming in, says, right, England are playing football today at Wembley, off you go. And I'm sitting here, and I go, oh, okay, get the cameras. The bike, those days, you'd have a biker with you, you'd shoot a roll of film, give it to the biker, he would bike it back to the office, and they'd do the thing, and off the picture would go. Okay, fine. So I'm sitting there in my suit in the pissing rain at Wembley, shooting England versus Latvia or whoever it was, and thinking this is fantastic because it's England playing football at Wembley, don't it? But you forget. And then so you get opportunity, things happen, you learn to, and you're meeting people and seeing stories, and then suddenly the whole world opened up. But I hadn't forgotten the fact that I wanted to shoot stories. So because I was then living in East London, I began to shoot my own stories. And I photographed. I was living in Hackney, and there's Kurdish refugees living there. They're all coming in. I can't remember the name of the hall, but they used to all gather in the hall because they're trying to get asylum status here. And because of there, I started shooting pictures there, and I met this family, this guy who'd been tortured, and there were 4 of them sleeping in one bed. I did their story, and the New Statesman published it. I did it all aside of Reuters, but they didn't want the story, so New Statesman used the story, which I was very proud of. That was a good thing. But of course, when you work for Reuters, you don't have time for doing your own work, and so then eventually what happened was they then said they wanted. I moved from being a desker. They set up a UK operation, and I said so. I became a photographer working based in London, and I just basically for 10 years travelled the world shooting news and sport, politics, conflicts all around the world. It's fantastic, and that was a great time. But I'm always aware of the fact that you have to be human even when doing news pictures, because news photography is about you take a picture, you're taking, and you're there to cover the news, you're there to be honest and fair, and we never set up with Reuters. You don't set up pictures, you don't photograph pictures. If you do, you're fired. That's it. So I really liked the trust principles, the ethics of the way they work. Safety was always a big issue. And so you keep safe, but more so as further up. And then the technology changed. So because I basically worked through the transition of analog and film to digital. So we bought digital cameras and autofocus cameras as well. And so then what happened is instead of the FA Cup final, you would shoot 3 rolls of film. That's it. So 3 lots of 36. What's that? That's whatever that is. 112, isn't it? You've got 112 pictures, the whole FA Cup final, from goals, celebrations, pots, the whole thing, and that would be it. And then, but nowadays you're using digital. The cameras do 20 frames a second. They do 1,000 stuff, and you can stream the stuff on through lines. So you've got an editor sending the pictures, so you do the whole thing. So when we used to cover international football in the days of film, Liverpool versus Bayern Munich. Our competitors would be AP and AFP, and we'd all cover the game, we'd get our pass, we'd go there, and because of the deadline, you would have 3 or maybe 5 minutes shooting football, and then you'd have to get into your hotel room, process the film and send it off, because if you miss the deadline, it's too late, you might as well not bothered. So you drive all the way to Liverpool or Manchester or wherever the team was playing internationally, stay in a hotel, set the dark room up, you go there, and with your competitors, you'd only compete because they're friends. You see them all the time. They're friends. You'd only really compete when you're taking pictures. So you might share a taxi back to the hotel. You stay in the same hotel because it's nearest. It's the same thing. So you don't need to fuck each other over so we'd share a taxi, and there'll be a bit of action, and we'd all leave at the same time. And basically, if you muds that bit of action, got out of focus, or you're slow in processing your film or whatever, and you were third on the wire, so you would lose. So you'd be competing directly with these 2 other guys, and you'd lose. So it means the whole trip up there was completely wasted because your pictures wouldn't be in the paper. So you'd have to, and every day was competing hard, and you'd try and get the best picture, but if you lost, you weren't in it, and it's like you can't. In news business, you can't lose. You have to be first. And it really drums it into you, speed, accuracy, and so you then begin to put processes into place in your work to make sure that everything works smoothly. So if something went wrong, you lose, and you go, oh, I've lost. And your bosses would see that you lost, because they go, well, you got nothing in the paper, what's wrong? And because you wanted to go on to the best jobs, only the best people went to the Olympics, only the best people went to the World Cup, only the best people would go to the big news stories, and I wanted to do that. So I'd always, so the whole of my working life, like now, even now, I have put structures into place to make myself efficient, so I don't make silly mistakes with timing, and I was very organised with my film and my pictures, and make sure it's all accessible as well. So I think it's very important. So to be organised is very important. I'm not naturally an organised person, but certain things I make myself very organised. But then when the technology changed from analog to digital, you could send you hundreds of pictures, cameras out, and I suddenly became more interested in editing the pictures. So I became so you maybe work with 2 or 3 people at an event. So that you went to a demonstration or write something, you'd have one person would gather up the film, and then they would go back and process the film and send the pictures on the wire. Because then you used to have remotes. You'd have a machine. You'd set it in the bathroom in a hotel, so you could transmit down the telephone line. And I became more and more interested in editing people's work. So I'd shoot pictures myself, pick the other photographer's film up as well. And a lot of people would actually put their own pictures on and bugger the others, and I was actually more interested in the best picture because I wanted the team to win. I want to win. I want to be the best, but it's teamwork. And other photographers liked the way I had a nickname, Cropper Boyce, because I would crop their pictures in a way that I knew would go in the newspapers, and I'd be fast at it. And I became more and more interested in the editing process. And rather than actually taking pictures, I still love taking pictures, but I like it for the business. And then eventually I applied for a job to be chief photographer Asia, which is a big gig. And I thought, I'm going to travel around the whole of Asia shooting pictures, and it's going to be wonderful. And it involves shipping the whole family to live in Singapore. And when I got there, the boss there, Paul Barker, lovely guy, and he said, okay, things started happening in Asia. Things happen all the time. Earthquakes, volcanoes, riots, just every time something's happening. It's like brilliant, dynamic place, news, full of news, good stories, happy stories, everything we imagine. And I thought, I'm going to photograph all that. And of course, it's so big, you're not going anywhere. So in the end, I realised that what I was doing was actually looking at other people's work again. That's exactly how I began. And I thought, this is not what... And also, because it was Asia, it was actually Europe and Americas. Asia was like number 3, and Africa as well was probably number 4. And I thought, what I want to do is bring my knowledge of Europe and my experience to the Asian photographers and explain to them this is what we need about speed, about systems, blah, blah. And so I would travel to so if there was like Formula 1, so it'd be in Tokyo, it would be in Malaysia, so you'd need an excuse to go to the country. You'd meet the team, you'd run a story and explain this is what we want, and then you spend time with them, and they'd always come more money, come on cameras, and you'd listen to photographers. So a lot of my work there was actually about growing photographers and getting them to understand what the company wants. And I wanted, as my job, and I wanted to get the company to understand what the photographers needed to do what the company wanted. I was always very interested in that dynamic relationship. And I spent 6 years there, and I remember the guys in Japan, great photographers, but they all wanted to shoot, all of them wanted to shoot sport, and they said to me, we never get to go to the Olympics, we never get to the World Cup. I said, why is that? And I said to them, because they're very Japanese, I said, well, because you can't speak English. And we're doing this through some of the translates, and you don't speak English. Said, well, why? I said, at the Olympics, the whole team is connected on radios, because the way the Olympics work, you've got all the events happening, you've got the track record things happening, and inside the track, you've got the field events happening, and you're only allowed a certain number of photographers, and they're all talking on the radios, and they're telling, that so-and-so is going to do a long jump, it could be a record run, get round there, and you move your team around. I said, the whole team communicate on radio, and they work as a team. If you don't speak English, and you don't go to the right spot when something's happening, and you don't get the guy winning the gold medal because you don't understand. I said, the whole team, and at the Olympics, everyone's looking. 2 weeks, everyone looking. And if you don't get that key gold winning medal, blah, blah, it's like when England play football. If you do not get the winning goal, you might as well not bother. Do not. And when photographers miss it, they don't need to be told they missed it. They're crushed, they know. There's a guy, I remember, England won 1-0, and the celly went into, he went into his corner. He fucked it up. He didn't have a picture. Just whatever reason it was, he's not a bad guy. Just sometimes the photo gods don't smile. And he was devastated, and no matter how much you try and shoot, don't worry, mate, there's another. And I said, England won, but there'll be another game. Yeah, but because we knew we lost. So the papers the next day would have no picture. And so the team, I said to them, so what you got to do then? I said, you've got to learn to speak English. How do we do that? I said, well, basically just have I call it an English day. I said, all of you in the office, when you come in, just talk English. Do you want a coffee? No, just, I said, and then learn your English. And then when you're good enough, I would say, right, because the picture's good enough, but you can, and then when you're good enough, you can push for it. And then I also pushed for the diversity aspects of it. You needed people from Asia to go, like the Japanese team. They wanted Japanese photographers in the World Cup. They want that. So, and that really pleased me. That growing these people who are fabulous people, fabulous photographers, and suddenly the work improved, and it was brilliant. And then I would explain things, and that's fantastic. And then what happened is that Reuters decided they wanted to set up a thing called the wider image, which was because Reuters' business is news photography now, and it doesn't matter. And they decided what they wanted to do to diversify, to make ourselves different from other clients. They wanted to have a thing called the wider image, which is like in-depth stories, where you have an in-depth story about to explain why the news is happening. Or there's a riot going here because there's a riot kicking off. Or why is the riot kicking off? Oh, because the fuel prices have gone up and people can't afford it, and the impact of that is the fuel prices, they can't buy the oil for their cooking, and therefore you've got families that can't afford to cook. That's why there's a riot. So the news image is the riot. The explanation of the news is the fact that they can't buy the cooking oil, and that's the wider image story. So they said to me, basically, they said, right, can you? Because they knew I liked doing these stories. They said, right, basically, they wanted me to run it. So I then took over working with the boss then, Reinhard, left Asia, came back to London to run the wider image. And so basically we set up this training program to teach photographers that we're saying, right, we want you fast now, to say, actually, no, we want you to do the complete opposite, slow. So the complete other, but at the same time, you've got to be fast, but you've got to be slow. And I said to them, this is a really complicated message to explain photographers. News photographers are reactive. Bomb happens, they'll run to it. A fight happens, they'll run to it. A kiss happens, they'll run to it. They react to the news. They're not proactive. They're not trained naturally to proactively go, what is going to happen here? Something happens and then they see it, and that's what makes a great news photographer. Most people run away from trouble and things that are happening. News photographers straight in there, and so to get them to try and do the other thing as well at the same time is very hard. So I devised a training program. So we basically, me and Reinhard, it was very nice actually. We travelled the world, going to different centres. We get all the photographers in. She'd meet all these people and explain to them the sort of the structure of the wider image. And the structure of the wider image was based around the teachings, what Daniel Meadows taught me when I was at college. So it's a big circle I've talked here. So basically he would say you need the establishing shot, the portrait picture, you need the doing picture, you need the result of the doing, the general view, and the wow picture. And if you have all those pictures, you've got enough for a story. And that's what he taught us, and that's what I would taught the guys from the wider image, and a detail picture as well. Let me go through it again. So it's a general view, a portrait, the action picture, the consequence of the action, the detail picture, something close that you wouldn't want to see, and the wow picture. And you have those images, you have a story. And some stories need lots of detail pictures, some stories need lots of action pictures, some stories need the consequence of the action. So for example, for Coleman delivers coal, you've got the guy with the face, you do the general view of him in his car and his trunk, then you've got a picture of him delivering the coal face, and then the action picture of him putting the coal out. The result of the action is the people that had the coal have got a fire, and then you do a detail picture, which is maybe his grubby hands, and then the wow picture, maybe just a wow picture of whatever that scene is, and then you've got the story of the coal man delivering coal. And you apply that to floods, to tsunamis, to conflict, to whatever news story it is, and you build stories with the Reuters platform delivered to the customers. Then you go, wow, and you have the wow picture. You have a wow picture that's delivered globally, and they won awards. You can still see it now, the wider image. It's not as good as it used to be, of course. But the thing is, with those things, when you get on a new format, and suddenly everyone was completely blown away by these things, and they use it. Now other people are doing it. when I did when I was doing the cropping stuff, people used to like me to edit their stuff because I'd do it, and you crop to for a while. We at the UK operation, our pictures would be in all the newspapers, even though, like say, party conference, the paper would send their own photographers, and we would actually get our pictures on the front page of that photographer's paper. And it was very difficult because it meant that he or she didn't have a picture in their own newspaper because they used an agency picture, and it was like not good. That was like, well, hang on a minute, we've sent you there. Why is it that Reuters have got a better picture? And we had a team of people that worked there, and we were very, very good. And we would regularly get pictures out of everyone out of their own papers, because we would take risks. So I would always use a long lens, very long lens. People go, "What are you using that for?" I said, "I don't know." And we were always trying to get something different. So because everyone did the same thing, and we would crop to some like the eyes. I remember when I did a Prince Charles tour. He went to India, and they put the mark in the middle of the forehead. I can't remember what it's called now, whatever that mark's called. It'll come back to me. And Arthur Edwards, famous Arthur Edwards, the Sun newspaper royal photographer, and he saw my picture on the screen. It's literally just Prince Charles's eyes and his nose and this big red dot on the. He said, "Russell, mate," he said, "you cropped too much. You can't see, Prince Charles's face. What a stupid picture." I said, "Yeah, Arthur, yeah, right, yeah." Next day, it's the front of the Sun. And he went, "Well, I've got to hang it to you." It's never nasty, because they know we're just doing our job, and they would look at it, and then they would begin to shoot that way, and then people begin to emulate our style. Because I worked with a team of photographers, they were great guys, we were all competitive, we got on well, we all did different, it just gelled like a jigsaw puzzle. When you put all the pieces together, it made a perfect picture, and we would operate in different ways. So some guys always want to take pictures, I'm always happy to shoot a picture and edit. And I remember one day during the riots in Italy, I think it's G7 riots, basically a protester got shot in the face by the Italian police, and my friend photographed that picture, and he had the film of it, and he said there's tear gas everywhere, this happened, and he had this picture of this policeman shooting him in the face. The protester had a fire extinguisher, and he was going to throw it at the police, and the Italian police around just shot him in the face, and my friend had this picture. The only person who wanted to look at the picture was me, and everyone knew we had these pictures. And I hid away. I just calmly went through the whole stuff, because he was photographing through a gas mask. A lot of them were out of focus. You only need a few, and that was just a sequence of about 8 pictures. Sent it everywhere, that picture. But and that was nice as respect, because they liked how I edit, so I liked to do the editing. Anyway, back to the wider image. So the wider image, that was very successful, and after it was up and running, then they said to me, "Right, you can give that to someone else." That really pleased me, because I could combine my love for the news and my love for the storytelling, and also to help people. And we'd bring in new photographers to try to get them to do this thing. Some could do it, some couldn't do it, and that's the nature of the beast. Then they said to me, "Oh, can you? We want you to run." First of all, it started slowly. He said, "Oh, can you help me run Africa?" I said, "Yeah, I can run Africa." And then a bit later, he said, "Oh, can you help me run bits of," because it was when the Syrian conflict was going on, it was real bad stuff. And because the guy that ran it, he retired, and it's a really complicated story to run. And eventually, I said, "Well, can you run Africa?" He said, "Yeah, I'll help you with that." And he said, "Can you? By the way, you're running Middle East and Africa." And so I then ran, and normally that job is based in Beirut. I thought, "Oh, we'd go to Beirut, that'd be nice." Bit of an awkward conversation with the missus, but I thought that'd be good. Because Beirut is just a fabulous place anyway. So he said, "Actually, no, we're Spartan Savings, you're going to be based in London." Oh, okay, there you go. Mrs. Happy, So based in London. And I spent 5 years running the Middle East and Africa, and growing the team there, working with a fabulous team there. It's hard work, because you get anything happens there, is people dying basically, because of conflict and stuff. And so I'd get calls 2 or 3 times in the middle of the night, be an explosion, this, that. The missus used to tease me, said every time we would go out for dinner with people, I'd be a phone call, and I'd go, "How many dead?" And we were having dinner, and the phone would go, yeah, how many dead? And they go, like, "Oh," and then it would depend on the number of dead, like tsunami. If it's a few, if it's a volcano, you need to work out how to send your resources, because every time you do a story, it costs money to send resources. People fly in different countries. There's the risk evaluation for their safety, what's going on, logistics. I mean, if they've been in like an earthquake or something, and you can't send your team in. They have to come with generators and food and safety and water, and also be prepared. The people you're going into don't have any of that stuff, so they might try and take, so all of those things have to be taken into account. Anyway, so I ran that for a while. It's great. The team were fantastic. It's really, really hard work. And then Royce decided they were going to combine television and stills. They decided they're one and the same thing. And so therefore I knew then right under the wall they were going to get rid of the one line of management, and TV went on one of their pictures, and they made redundant. And the day I got the email from HR, you are invited for a mandatory, or requested to attend a mandatory meeting with HR and your boss. It's during COVID. I said to the Verity, so I'm going to be made redundant. She said, good, because that job's killing you. And then I was made redundant. I had a fantastic time there, brilliant. Travelled the world, met fantastic people. I did a career of pictures, but what that redundancy allowed me to do is I now shoot my own stories. So I got a pension. I'm a pensioner, and I can now shoot my own stories. And I've all that experience I've learned to not. I've actually come back to my roots, and I'm now shooting stories about my community. The first story I did, because I thought about it, I can't go back to what I did when I was 21 with a black and white film camera and float around, because I'm not 21 anymore, sadly. I didn't want to do what I did with Reuters as using the digital 35mm, because it was like, where would it go? What would I do with it? And I was worrying about what I should do. And then a friend of mine, Mike Hutchings from South Africa, he mentioned that someone had given a Rolleiflex, which is a medium format camera. And I used to use those with Michael Manning, who used to do some stories square format. I thought, just do the commercial jobs. I thought, oh yeah, I'll have a look, because of the way you look at it, where you compose it square format, where it's not 35mm, so you begin to look at pictures differently. And with a Rolleiflex, you look through, everything's back to front, so it's like you have to, left is right and right is left. So I thought, oh, that's an interesting challenge. So I said to Verity, so I'm going to buy and Rolleiflexes there. To get a good one is hard, because they're vintage cameras. They don't make them anymore. You have to buy an old one. And I said to her, I'm going to buy a vintage Rolleiflex, but I'm going to get a good one. And she said, oh, Russell, okay, right. So how much is that? So they're going to cost about £2,500. She said, £2,500. She said, oh. So she's wonderful. So she's explained to me, Russell. She said, oh. So you have got, so the company gave me the cameras. So you've got 2 or 3 top of the range digital cameras with the lenses that are all digital, so it's the money. And you want us to, out of our pot, because we're now pinched. So you want to spend £2,500 on a camera that's vintage, that works back to front, that you need to put film into process, because I've got bad hands now, with all chemicals my hands go funny, to shoot picture stories. Can you explain to me what your thinking is? I mean, you can't really explain it, can you? Because on the face of it, it's pretty bloody stupid, isn't it? I said, well, I want to experiment with shape, and I'll do it. She went, okay, that makes sense, because she's cool with that. She understands it. And so then I had to look. I got this camera, and I bought it from. I spent a long time looking, and I tried on eBay, and it's a terrible problem. And in the end, I saw it advertised, and this guy called Classic and Vintage Cameras, based in Portsmouth. His name's Robert. And I said to him, this is what I'm interested in. I said, I don't want a shit camera. I said, I don't want a camera to go on the shelf, because people collect these things now and put them on the shelf. So I want to take pictures with it. I want it to work. I don't want to take a picture, then I come back and discover that the technology is not there. So he said, I've got just a camera for you. He says, not cheap, he says, and that's when I bought this one. And I got this camera, very excited, and I didn't even know how to load it, so I had to go on YouTube and to learn how to load the film. Bought the film, and it was £6.80 a roll for 12 frames, chemicals, yeah, anyway. And then, so basically I was then learning how to do it. So what I want to do is I want to do a small project. So first of all, I thought I need to learn how to use it. So I photographed my neighbours outside the house, because I love those Victorian Edwardian pictures, people standing outside their shops, the shopkeepers, and the shop is beautiful. I love those pictures, and it's because they're so proud, they're so ordinary. I love things that are ordinary, because time makes them extraordinary. So it's anything that's ordinary with enough years, it becomes extraordinary. And so I needed to learn. I thought what I'd do during COVID, and when it was about the high street, people talk about the high street and the shopkeepers and people, shops be open, and I decided that my first project would be my own high street, and I'd photograph the shopkeepers, like with a nod to the Edwardian pictures, and I would ask them what their business was, when they started it, and what they thought their the future of the high street would be after COVID and going onwards. And I videoed those things, because I learned about video as well because of Reuters days, and the questions from the journos, and then I actually then shot a still picture. I shot a still picture of the whole shopkeeper, the owner, and the business owner, and their staff all outside. And I did a single picture inside of the owner of the business, and then I'd video them asking the questions and produced an exhibition all along the high street, which was nice because I exhibited that out on the street, because I think it's very important to when you do work in the community can see it and see the work, and that was important to me, and then went from there, and then I've just grown the projects. So that's it. But it's always important that people see the pictures, and now the camera for me is like a passport into other people's lives, people interested. And what I'm interested in, what I call is negotiated space. I don't crash in and take a picture. I talk about what I'm doing with photography, and you get a different sort of portrait by using a different technology, the different format, and having that negotiated space. So a long way from, but basically it's come back. And what I did coming back to Ray is that when I was, I think it was, after being made redundant, George, the Rag and Bone Man, told me that he was going back out on the Rag and Bone with his dad after nearly 40 years. And because he'd basically been working the rig. So I photographed him in '83, and he was the coolest looking guy on earth, shirt off, ripped, rag bone, flat top haircut, getting stuff. And then he, with a horse and cart, and he said, after all these years I'm going out again, this time of day. And I said, George, I'd love to take another set of pictures to follow up on this. And I said, George said, yeah, fine. I said, George, ask your dad. He might not want me there. And his dad said, yeah, you can come along, it doesn't get in the way. And I spent all that time. I then followed up with George doing that. So this time I shot it all in colour to counter the black and white because I wanted to look different, and that's it. And when I was up there, I noticed that Candy DeBarry was still performing. And I said, it's Bobby Man. That's it. George told me that basically Bobby Mandrell was Candy DeBarry, Ray Millington. And I said, that is amazing. I said, I've got to do some pictures. So I phoned him up and said, can I take some pictures? And he said, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And I said, what I'd also like to do, I'd like to do a video and ask you about your life and stuff, and I want to show you the old pictures in black and white, you can talk through them. And it was all, that'd be good. I thought, fantastic. And then because the Star and Garter is now Rayner's still there as well, I thought I'd take my black and white prints in there and hold them up in the same position and do pictures of those. So there's 3 stories all updated, it'd be nice. And then Ray called me back and said, oh no, I've decided I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I said, he said, I don't want to do it, it's too much hassle, and blah, blah. I said, I'll tell you what, Ray, just let me come and photograph the show. He said, yeah, you can do that. And then he then basically changed his mind, and he let me film him talking about his life. And once he got into it, it was just fantastic. And it was like showing him the pictures, it was just refreshing memories, and he was just, basically me, George and him just had a laugh for about 3 hours, looking at his pictures, laughing, and then up to his room where he's got all his costumes, and he put his makeup on. I did a time lapse of him putting his makeup on, because he said doing the eye makeup's the hardest thing. You've got to do that. It's got to be right. So I do it at home, and I drive in, and he said sometimes I'm stopped by the police. They look in the car and go, what's going on here then? Son. And he explains it. And these days everyone's so comfortable with it. It doesn't matter. But then and then he did the show, and so then I ended up with basically 3 sets of pictures that I shot originally in the 80s and all updated 21-22, which formed the basis of exhibition with George, You and Me in HU3. So there it is, really. That's it.
That's pretty impressive.
Is that okay?
Brilliant. I do have some questions.
Go on,
First of all, it's fascinating thinking about the influence of Daniel on your career, as a student and then right through to Reuters. Could you tell us something more about Daniel or your experience of him, and maybe how he critiqued the work? Or
the thing is, in college, he would always have time for you, no matter how busy he was. He always have time, and he would show prints. But it was very he was always right. It was very annoying. You think it's like, you think you're a great picture. He goes, Russell, that's very, very nice, but imagine if you did that, and then you go away and did it, and you realise where he was coming from, and he really helped you grow. I mean, during that time, it was, and basically he sparked my passion for documentary photography. It's him it's his bloody fault, you know. So and that's it. So saying to me, take the camera down to Bob Carver's it, and then rather than just forget, oh yeah, you know, he then nurtured and grew me to the extent that I became confident enough to go under my own steam. And what was nice is my last set of pictures I did down the Leavage Road, I actually sent him. I said to him, it's all very well, you know, all the experience, but it's always nice to have, when I show people now, they go, oh, lovely, 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 you know, and they go, wonderful, wonderful. But I really wanted someone to actually critique my work in a way that I could trust. So I sent him my stuff, and he basically said to me, he said, why are you shooting in black and white? He said, the world's colour. He said, you need to get closer to your subject, not necessarily physically closer. Someone was physically closer, and because I was using the Rolly, it's hard to focus. I was standing too far away because I was trying to get it focused, and I realised that. And he was asking, well, why are you doing it? Why this? Why the story? And he says some of the pictures are boring, and he's right. He said some of them aren't sharp, and he's right. And he said, just you need to tighten it all up. So, and then he felt guilty. He said, I've reread the criticism. I did. He said, I felt like being really harsh. I said, Daniel, I don't have a problem with that. So that's like, man, you know. But it's right what he said, you know. And I enjoyed the feedback I got from him. And we talk every now and then, and we don't talk a lot because our lives have moved on, definitely. But when we do see him, I've seen his exhibitions. It's very warm, very friendly. It's like we met last week, you know, years and years met apart. But he's still got a passion for stories. He's still got a passion for documentary work. I think he's still got the passion for ethical storytelling, which is what I'm very interested in as well. So yeah, it's nice. You know.
And did he mean by closer that to build a relationship with people more?
No, I think he meant. I think he felt like he was viewing the story from a distance. And I needed to get closer so he could view the story closer, and that meant both getting. So you felt the images were more intimate because people were getting more used to me, and physically closer so you can see more of the people. So it was a complicated thing to say, and it took me a while to work out what I'm doing. I'm still working out. You never solve it completely. You're still struggling, still working, and someone's thinking, I wish I'd shot like that, wish I'd like that. But every now and then you get people saying, oh yeah, that's nice, you know. So yeah.
Then there was, I mean, clearly you've had an incredible career and taken lots of amazing photos and edited amazing photos, but what is it about Hull and those early days that's been so influential?
I think what it was the transition from having a no arts background, almost being exposed to life. I suddenly thought I was seeing life raw, and it wasn't as frightening as I thought it might be. It was actually frighteningly exciting and interesting. And what I've learned and what I believe is there's more good in people than there is bad in them, and I think even bad people have got good in them. And what I've learned is that some people you think, well, they'll never let me photograph, blah blah, and then you talk to them, can I take and explain what you're doing, and it's fine. So like in the pub, the Star and Garter, we used to go in there. The barman or the landlord would every day go, oh Ross, pour me a pint, and there you go. That's for you, son. There you go. Thank you very much. A couple of sips, bit of a chit chat. Put the pint down, take some pictures. Look at some bugger at the pint away every single time. You know, and some people will be aggressive towards me first of all. You're not taking my fucking picture. You'll get a fucking knuckle sandwich, all that stuff. And then when I started giving prints to people, the same guy goes, where's my picture then? I said, well, you said you'd give me a knuckle. Yeah, I didn't mean that, of course. Yeah, so, and I think you just take time. And I think what I've learned from Hull is people are warm on the whole. You know, people, no matter how harsh they might appear on the outside, if you take time, take an interest, and listen to them, then people are just people. On the whole, of course, there are some bad people, but most people, and I believe most people are good. You know, they've got. You know, that's what I've learned, and So like there's a photographer I really admire, Zora. She's an Algerian woman, and she does stories that are just terrible stories. When people have died and goes to a funeral, and she says it's about, because a news photographer, you need to get the picture, and she said I never take pictures without permission, and so sometimes you can't speak the language, and I said, well, how do you do that? She explained to me, so what I do is I go into so you imagine a room full of women weeping over a dead relative, and it's a room, and there's people, and the atmosphere is tense, and you're walking in as a complete stranger with a camera as a news photographer. And so what I do is I always walk in and I hold in my camera so everyone can see I've got my camera, and I look at people in the eyes, and I know those eyes are going to say to me yes or no. And she says, I know when I've been given permission. It's not written, it's not spoken. So I look in the eyes and I know, and when I know the answer is no, I know I've been given a no, and I will never take that picture. But once I've got a yes, then I'll put the camera and I'll take pictures, and that's it. And I think you do the same thing with conversation. You just know, as with years and years of taking pictures, you know when you get permission. And the thing to do is to not exploit that position of the yes, to actually take advantage of people that might be vulnerable, might be in a desperate situation, but at the same time it's important to record those situations, because it's important to record the stories, to show the stories, but you have to do it in a way that is respectful, and I like to think that's what my photography is about, respect.
I mean, and I think that is really clear in the photographs of that time in the 80s when you were in Hull. Well, even in your photos more recently of Ray, there is a warmth and generosity in them. There's a lot of humour.
Yeah, that's got to be funny, isn't it?
Yeah. I had a question. It was about the people that were in, when you talked before about St George's, and you said it wasn't ever called a drag night, it was called a gay night.
No, I didn't say that. It was sometimes called drag night. So it was referred to as gay night sometimes. It was sort of, in
the adverts or just between.
I don't remember. Just amongst people. I think the banner at the beginning, these posters, drag night with Candida Barry. I think it was literally drag night. But I think the locals might say, oh, it's gay night in the pub. But it wasn't a negative thing. It was like a label. There it is. So it's like, oh, that's that night. It's like it's a blue night or a green night. Oh, it's gay night, whatever it is. So I think that's.
And you talked as well about there was no violence or tolerance, and there was a lot of tolerance. Do you remember? I guess what I'm interested in knowing is, do you remember who was in those venues? I think it was young people from across the city, or was it all just locals?
I think it's locals. I mean, there's a picture there I've got, and I call the picture date night, and I don't know who these people are, but there's a woman and a man there, and he's got his jacket on and he's got his tie on, and he's sitting next to a woman who's slightly younger than her, and you wouldn't imagine those people to be in a drag event. They were just like, you can imagine them having lunch in a Beefeater. You couldn't imagine them being in that pub. And I remember taking the picture thinking that, because when you're building a story, you include elements, and one of the elements was there were people that in the pub that I wouldn't thought would be in the pub knowing what the event was. And I think it was because people actually came to the pub for a pleasant evening, fun evening, and it didn't matter whether they're a member of the gay community or just a local. And the fact this guy brought his, I look like they're either new couple or very old. I don't know, something. I don't know what it is. It's just they're sort of, prejudice is the wrong word. It's like a surprise that they didn't. It kind of looked. It's sort of like you're going to a party or something, and someone's turned up in fancy dress, and they shouldn't be in fancy dress. That's the same. So everyone else is noisy and drunk and flamboyant, and these people were sort of very, very straight. But when you looked around, there were a few people like that. So it's like I don't know. It's just like it was the local, and the local on Sunday night was drag night, and so I'm going to go to my local. Oh, and that's happening. Like if it was bingo night, or if it was, I don't know, whatever night it is. They would just go there. So or quiz night. You want to go to your local. Oh, it happens to be quiz night. You go to the local. It happens to be drag night, but I'm going to my local, and I think that's what it was. And I like that mix of people. Obviously, Ray's entourage were always there because he had his techie stuff, and his mates would turn up. I wouldn't go there every sort of Sunday because some of them do other things, but I would know that thing was happening and I was there to take pictures. But sometimes people in the house, student house, sometimes they would come with me just for a night out, and sometimes I would rather they weren't there because I didn't want them in my pictures, but the art students in my pictures, So it's it was just, I think it was just a mix of the local community, really. I think that was it. I was part of that community, so.